Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to the Gamerpreneur podcast. I'm your host, Bradford Carlton. Now, I want to welcome a very special guest. I apologize in advance. I hope I don't mess up his name. It's Nepomuk Nothelfer.
Wow, that was actually 100% correct.
Beautiful.
Hey, not even kidding.
Hey, Nepo, how's it going today?
Pretty great. I mean, with great weather, of course, we're not allowed to go outside that much, but I'm on the balcony, a little bit of working, and maybe after the interview, a little bit of gaming. But I'm fine. How about you?
It's a cloudy day in Las Vegas today, actually. So normally it's a sunny day, but it's a little cloudy. So Nepo, you were recommended to me as like one of the most important people in gaming. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, I mean, this is 100% wrong. I know who said it. I'm honored, of course, if some people say, but I mean, if we're talking about esports and research, probably a bit more than esports and being a practitioner. So I'm Nepomuk. I'm 20 years old, born, raised, and educated in Germany, southern part of Germany in Bavaria, actually. And yes, I have a pair of lederhosen, but I'm not going to show them, I promise. I studied law, made my exam in 2016, and since then I've been working as an research assistant and doctoral candidate at the University of Augsburg. So I work, research, and teach in law. My focus is civil and labor and employment law and everything digital. So of course, esports as well. I'm doing some side projects. For example, I'm working for a partner of Baker McKenzie, which is pretty famous in the law world, in the law industry. Dr. Nick Baer, a partner in compliance here in Munich. And yes, I mean, there's more to unpack, but that's a short version.
Oh, absolutely. Well, we're going to get into it. Now, before we get into it, I ask everybody one question. I'm going to ask you just along with everybody else. And I don't know if you've seen in my other episodes, Roman, who introduced us, he's like, I've seen all your episodes. I know what the question is. He started answering before I even asked it. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being high, how weird are you?
How weird I am? Wow, I really like the question. I guess it depends. I mean, there are moments where really you have to be business and not that weird. But I guess it's from 1 to 10. Roman is probably a 15, and I guess I am a 7. But to be honest, I mean, there are some things. I mean, one is always not weird to himself, right? So my normal is probably a 7 out of 10.
Beautiful.
For regular people.
And why is that?
I mean, my humor is pretty bad. Not that joke bad, but pretty bad and specific. So either you hate it or you love it. I guess that's one big part of my being. And of course, I tend to love a lot of pop cultural things. We've talked before, manga, anime, gaming, and in the eyes of a regular person, whatever this may be, this probably ranks me about 7 out of 10.
It's funny you bring up the regular person, because that's my point of asking this question. I've asked every single gamer I've interviewed that question, and they all rank themselves very high because in the eyes of that, quote, regular person, they're all, quote, weird. However, when you look at it, we're all regular people. We just like gaming. And so we all have different likes, interests, dislikes. And so I'm trying to bring that scale down over the course of the show, hopefully. Because before, when I first started, everybody was like, I'm a 10, I'm a 15, I'm a 12. And now I'm a 6, I guess I'm just a gamer.
I guess I'm boring. I just don't want to face it.
Okay, so this is the Gamerpreneur. So I need your gamer cred before we really get started. So can you tell me how you first started playing video games?
My first time playing video games, I mean, I was born in 91, so if we're getting like sevens or close to the 2000s, video games have been a bigger part of growing up than maybe 10 years before that. So all of my friends played video games, and my father bought me a magazine. I'm not sure whether it was PC Games. I can't remember which one, but there were the CD as an extra with really old-fashioned games, like the Prince of Persia style. Mm-hmm. And I fell in love with them instantly. And later I played a lot of football/soccer, so FIFA was a huge thing for me. And yeah, then came my our big love, World of Warcraft in 2005, if I remember correctly. I started playing World of Warcraft, and yeah, since then I've seen the sun rarely, but I enjoy it. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But this is probably the different stages of me and my gaming career.
Hey, you joke, but I have at least 2 years played in game on Warcraft.
I'm not giving a statement regarding the time I've played that game.
Okay, so what is it you play now? What kind of games do you play? Do you even have time to play at the moment?
No. The answer is no. I've got so many projects. I mean, with gaming and esports, fortunately. But since the current crisis, of course, I had time to breathe a little bit. And I mean, FIFA and World of Warcraft Classic. So with my friends, a little bit of NBA 2K and FIFA, and with some other friends, World of Warcraft Classic, which I said, I mean, let's try it out. I mean, 1 or 2 hours maybe.
So what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, what's the worst that can happen? Now I'm divorced. I'm level 40 now, and I probably won't stop in the next 2 weeks.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
But you're right. I mean, there's a ton of work, and I'm trying to just sprinkle in a little bit of gaming in the evening.
Okay. I got one more kind of gaming personal question for you. Then we'll kind of get into what it is you do professionally. And this is a loaded question, but what's your favorite game of all time?
I mean, the favorite game, it depends on how you look at it. And when I hear
a lawyer answer, give me the real answer.
Yeah, it is. I'm so sorry. The university has really gotten to me. No, I think I link it with having joy, and the things we did in World of Warcraft with the guild. A lot of people I still have great contact with, and these were the best times. Burning Crusade times were really special, and they hold a dear place in my heart. When you talk about story-wise or graphics, for example, there would be different answers, of course, because the graphics in World of Warcraft aren't the best. I really love the Final Fantasy series, for example. Yeah, and sports games, because I'm a big sports fan. So probably this is my answer.
Beautiful. Okay, so now let's get to the preneur part, the business side of this. Yeah. What is your professional background in esports? What is it you do?
So I studied law, and I teach law, of course. So I'm an expert on law. I mean, I've been a player for all my life regarding gaming, esports, but I'm a lawyer first, probably business-wise. And my background is that we founded the first research center for esports law in Germany at the University of Augsburg, where I work. And yeah, this is why I've gotten into contact with so many teams on different levels, pro teams, amateurs, a hobby, whatever, you name it. With for example, G2 Esports, a lot of lawyers who are working with big teams. This is the background. And this is why I'm 100% not the most important person in esports and law in Germany, like 100% I'm not. But we bring a lot of people together. for example, we're bringing out what it's called a Kommentar in Germany, a huge commentary. It's a huge book about esports terms and what the implications regarding law are or can be or maybe will be. It's a huge project, way over 1,000 pages, all of that stuff. And we bring together a lot of people from tournament organizers and regular lawyers and all of these people. And this is probably the interesting thing. So I'm connected pretty well, I guess, now. We started in January 2019, so it's not like we're the old organization. So we're pretty new as well.
Okay. So can you kind of give me or give my viewers a little bit of background history on the state of the law when it comes to gaming and esports?
In Germany in particular, or?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Well, the one thing, I mean, the lawmaker is an integral part of the law, of course. And we have been lucky enough to talk with a lot of them to tell them what is esports, what are the big implications, why should you sit down with experts, whoever these experts might be, and talk about it. And the lawmakers here in Germany are pretty conservative. I mean, not everyone, of course, but the parties, the big parties who are in control right now, they are. So there's nearly no regulation regarding esports specifically. We will have the first one regarding I'm not sure whether it's called, it's called visum or visa, being able to enter different states and work there.
The visa.
Yeah, visa, yeah. So they will have the first regulation actually that esports players have the same benefits as people from traditional sports, but not, for example, not the coaches. Not the coaches. So in sports, it's players and coaches, and in esports is only players. And the background probably is that they haven't really thought about, okay, are there coaches in the industry, in esports, which to us is crazy. They may have thought of it not being coaches on a pro level, but they don't really have the information. So that's the status right now. So, okay, a lot of them heard of it. They're getting more into it. Okay, something like that exists, but no specifics. So League of Legends and Counter-Strike, okay, but let's say esports, AR and VR. Is that even esports in the definition? They have no idea. So we have a lot of law-wise, we let a lot of stuff regarding sports, and we have to really, really research whether this should also apply to the esports situation. But we're really at the beginnings right now, like 5%. We have the login screen, but that's it.
Okay. So what's your day-to-day like then? Are you like a cloistered monk scribbling with a quill by candlelight, doing all your research?
Yes.
Or is it?
Yeah, 100%. Yesterday was the first day I've met this thing, computer, and it changed my life. No, on a serious note, we are searching for topics that are really, really interesting for the industry. So, for example, I come from labor and employment law. There are so many questions. When do you reach the level of being an employee with all of the law giving you, like shielding you, looking out for you? And these are questions that are really important to, for example, big teams. On the verge of amateur to pro level, are they self-employed or are they employees? Stuff like that. And we're trying to research what would a judge say in this particular situation. So we're writing a lot of publications on the non-profit status, for example, which is so enormously important for amateur esport teams. Labor law, what do you have to do? My recent publication is about occupational safety. So what has an employer to do that his employee feels good and does not get hurt in any way or form. Because if you play football, take a look at his knees. If you play VR sports with full body movement, same. But that's probably esports as well. If you sit down, it focuses more on hands and back and how do you sit and stuff like that. So we're trying to talk to the industry and find out what are the big law-related problems, and we're trying to conduct research.
Okay.
With computers.
With computer. So how is the rest of the legal industry, are they accepting of what you're doing? Is this such a new field that they're like, oh, it's just video games, or is it something that they're embracing?
Yeah, I've got to go with the number one lawyer answer as well. It depends. At the university, I'm not saying we were a laughing stock, that's probably too much, but everyone was like, for example, we had a big event and I was there and my professor wasn't there. And someone said, oh, so he's probably playing esports right now, ha ha ha. And everyone was like, okay, wow, that was a nice joke, but that's more like the university level. Or, oh, you have a research center for esports law, so let me guess, you have a PlayStation now. Something like this. So a little bit of some jokes, but when it comes to practice, the law firms, I mean, they're not dumb, right? They know that this is a big industry. There's a lot of money to earn, a lot of expertise to share, and they're all like, oh, we've been waiting for something like this. Let's collaborate. So we've actually have some collaborations right now. We're trying to get them online with the press releases. Some big ones I'm not allowed to spoil right now, but maybe we'll talk some other time again. But the law firms, they're really appreciative.
Okay, fantastic. What are some legal issues or challenges that teams should be on the lookout for? I mean, not necessarily just in Germany, because I mean, the law is fairly universal. I know each country or state has their own specific version of it, but legal issues exist everywhere.
The issues and the problems are the same, right? But maybe the solutions are a big difference. The one big thing is, if you really go before the court, before a judge, you should be prepared. Like Illidan in World of Warcraft said, you are not prepared. And I don't think that a lot of people are prepared, because there's this huge chance, I'm sorry, there's this huge chance you will face an older judge who has never heard of esports at all. And it will be pretty hard to help him get into the sphere, to get a feeling what's behind this. There's training in esports. Wow. There are millions to win in some tournaments. Wow. A lot of people don't even think about this. This is why we're writing publications, because the judges will be able to look them up. They just type in esports and the terms, and then our publications will come. And therefore, the first 30% always, okay, this is the industry, this is esports, this is what you have to look out for, because we're trying to get them to soak them into the industry. So this is not the number one thing. Then, for example, to be able to get the nonprofit status, you will have to do way more. If you say, we're a sports association, they're like, okay, sports, oh, it's in the list, check, nonprofit. Esports, okay, is that sports? I mean, esports, it's not a term in the law right now regarding nonprofits. Is it sports? Oh, what are we going to do? What is esports? There's a lot more information you have to give. One of my good friends, Urim, a lawyer from Austria, former Hearthstone, he lost the final in 2014, but a vice world champion. He's like, when I'm doing nonprofit status, I send them tons of information with all of that. So these are things you just have to work with people not knowing anything about esports. This is probably the one big thing. And of course, a lot of judges will maybe have a more traditional opinion about gaming, and they will probably say, okay, I'm not quite sure whether this should be supported. So we're in the early stages still in Germany, even though we have, of course, great people who are doing great work, educating and all of this stuff. We haven't really been able to break through to the big stage.
Okay. Do you think that might just be an issue of terminology? You know, we separate esports into this whole other world when we could just be calling it a sport. I mean, technically chess is a sport. It was an Olympic sport. Why are we separating gaming just because, or we just want to be different as gamers? Is that it?
So when it comes down to the definition of sports and esports, this is actually one of our main topics. So I could probably talk about that for 10 hours. I'm going to spare you. It's not that easy. So in my opinion, esports is not sports, but it's also not like there's no esports which is part of sports. It's not 100% or 0%. For example, let's talk about Hearthstone. In Germany, there are a lot of different sports definitions. It comes down to the code of law in which it's implemented. So if you're talking about visa, for example, it's not that important to have all of these full body activities, but for someone in the US and someone in Germany play against each other in a fair competition, that's far better than being in war. Something like this, like communication between countries. This is far more important. So why shouldn't Hearthstone be considered? It's a competition. It's on a fair basis. We have to talk about the influence of luck or RNG, of course, yeah. But there are these elements. So I tend to include Hearthstone into esports and sports regarding visa. But of course, you have different sports definitions with a focus on moving, like real full body movement. And Hearthstone, to be honest, I've played Hearthstone when I'm laying down on my handheld. This is not full body activation. So I'm really not a big fan of these of the question, is esports sports? Because we don't really know what esports is. We don't really know what sports is. The definitions when it comes to research aren't fixed. They depend on, are they in a code of law, in which code, all of these stuff. So, and I'm not a big fan of these extreme sides like left or right. I like to tend to have the middle ground. So there are esport titles who are definitely sports, and some that may or may not be. But yeah.
Oh, I was going to say, can you elaborate a little bit further about that distinction between games of skill and games of chance?
This is actually the one big thing we're discussing the most. So we've probably got everything else down except for that. And we in the research center, for example, 4 people with 4 different opinions on that. And I recognize that all these opinions origin from what games we like more. So for example, Philip, my colleague, he's into shooters. He's pretty good at Counter-Strike. And the RNG factor of Counter-Strike is pretty low. It's not 0%, but it's pretty low. I enjoy Hearthstone sometimes, and the RNG factor is pretty high. So I guess I'm a bit more open to RNG than other people, because I come from a point of view, if you accept that there is this kind of RNG in a game before you get into the competition, like you and me, we play against each other and we accept the circumstances of the game, which are big RNG factor. We can still, with our skills, make the best out of it, and also think about, okay, I've got this percentage of chance right now, so you can use it as well. So I'm not that big on, okay, you have to have 0 RNG enabled to have an esport. But of course, there is this line, and Hearthstone is probably over it, where it's just too much. So there is, with Yoxaron, for example, I mean, 1 card can change the game after turn 10 completely. And of course, there's the question, is this a fair competition? But I mean, all players accept it beforehand, right? So where is the problem?
Okay.
These are just some thoughts.
Thank you so much for sharing them with us. Now, this is a loaded question, but where do you see the industry going in the next 5 years?
So this is a tough question. First of all, I'm no expert, and I'm talking to a lot of experts from the business perspective, which gives me a good look into it. But I do not consider myself to be an expert in where does technology go, how will people react who don't like esports.
I meant more so the law, since that's your focus.
Oh, law. Okay. We're not there yet. We're not there yet. So we're doing everything we can. Like seriously, we are working way too much in order to get all of these great projects we're on right now going. And we talk a lot to politicians right now. And of course, Corona. Sorry?
I said, I'm so sorry. You have to deal with that.
Yeah. I mean, there are good people there too. I mean, they have a hard job, you know. So I don't want to point fingers, because I'm not sure whether I would do a better job. So I'm trying to not point fingers then. But it can be quite hard, yeah. But I think we're on a good way. And the current crisis right now with Corona, for example, right now there are bigger fish to fry. We really have to look out for so much stuff. So esports is not the main thing right now. It should not be the main thing. We have so many medical professionals who need so much help right now. So this has to be the focus, right? This has to be the focus. When we're able to cope with the situation, I hope that politicians will be able to see, okay, we now understand what chances are in gaming and esports, and maybe we could do more there and develop more. Because one thing is esports betting, for example. They have strict regulation when it comes down to sports betting. A lot of this, they're afraid of money laundering, for example. But they're not doing any real big moves in Germany regarding esports betting. And you can, I mean, the good old skin gambling topic really got a hit in the last weeks, okay? But you could do so much. It wasn't even illegal. It should be illegal, but you had so much possibilities to do stuff you shouldn't be doing. And the lawmakers in Germany, they didn't really see it at all. And I think they're getting there now, slowly. So I don't think we'll have the big developments in the next 3 years. This will be pretty tough, and 3 years probably not, but afterwards, I'm hopeful, I guess.
Okay, wonderful. I'm glad that you see a glimmer of hope at the end of the tunnel.
But you have to, right? You have to, because every day I wake up and I take a look at my to-do list, and I'm like, okay. And I guess you need that hope, that feeling that you're changing something, you're doing something for the best. Because I'm not earning any money. It's quite the opposite. I spend a lot of money traveling right now. Not right now, but of course in the last months and the year. And I wouldn't be able to do it if I don't think that there's a chance what we do does have a meaning and a purpose.
Working to change the world, it involves sacrifice.
Hopefully. But we have to be, and this is the other thing, not 0% and not 100%. There are risks to esports and gaming. So I really like the positive note of we change the world. I mean, the world is changing. Technology is running so fast. It will change. It doesn't matter what we're doing, but we should try to make it a healthy process. So we will change the world, hopefully, but in a healthy way. So it's not one extreme or the other. I mean, I'm a researcher, so my hardest job actually is staying neutral. Trying my best to stay neutral and not like, okay, of course I love gaming, right? But if I give in to that passion doing my work wouldn't be worth anything, because I'm just another person who says, no, esports and gaming, this is the number, we don't have any restriction, let's do it. So this is probably the toughest thing. I have a passion for sports, I have a passion for esports, and I gotta stay neutral. There are risks, stuff like that. I mean, I'm not implying that you're trying to say something different, but it's important to me to say.
Okay, wonderful. Now, I'd like to pull back for a second if I can. I'd like to humble you if you will allow me to, because I don't want everyone to think you're just a giant brainiac, the big old nerd sitting around all day on your computer researching, who's helping to shape the world of esports, at least in Germany.
Oh, God.
So if I can, I'd like to ask you, what is something that you have failed at?
Okay, well, first of all, hopefully that's not the impression you get of me that I'm so full of myself. Hopefully, but it's always good to be humble. I'm with you. I like the question of what's your biggest fail, because of course I do labor and employment law, and the whole HR process is filled with questions like these, catching someone off guard, and you really did. Catch me off guard right now.
I'll give you the questions. It shouldn't have been that bad.
Sorry?
I give you the questions in advance.
Yeah, but I did not read them because I like being surprised. I like being surprised, but I should have read them. No, I'm pretty young. I'm 20 years old. So, I mean, there's a lot of school and a lot of law school and all of this. So I'm in the real world since 2016. I've accomplished to get my driver license and stuff like that. So I don't really failed that much till this point, I guess. But there are a lot of things I could have done better. I don't consider them as a failure, but I should have done better. One of the things is focus. It's hard for me to say no if someone I like comes with a great idea I'm interested in. And this is the reason why there's so much stuff I do. There's way too much. And I know that there's way too much. But I mean, a good friend of mine comes to me and says, hey, we're building this great esports organization, and we will really giving kids a place to be, and we look out for them and show them how to play and all of this stuff. And I'm like, I'm in. This is amazing. And then I'm like, okay, when exactly will we be able to? So I'm doing too much. So focus is probably my main weakness.
Okay. What would you say is something you're not currently good at?
Focus. Probably, yeah. Focus is one of the things, and I'm trying to be. I like to be on a big stage in the first row. I like it, but not everyone likes that, of course. Interacting with people who are honest and maybe a bit too loud at some points. So I really try to tone myself down in the last years. I'm really trying to get to know my weaknesses and work on them. And probably this one is besides focus the biggest thing. So I'm always having thoughts in my head, and there are good times to say what you're thinking. There are bad times, and I'm working on that.
I have no time.
No, but I'm really trying to, because it's hard when some people discuss esports, for example, and I've done a lot of this till this point and regarding esports and law, and I know that what they're talking about, they're heading to this in the wrong direction. But I don't want to be the one who's being the smart beep, the smart beep to interrupt them and say, "Oh, you're so wrong. Let me tell you how the world works." And yeah, this is something you probably shouldn't do too often. So this is what I'm working on.
Okay. Now, before we kind of wrap up and bring this in for a landing, do you have any advice for anybody who might be interested in going into esports law? How does anybody even get into this field? Because I was an attorney for many years and I never even knew it was an option.
There are so many different ways depending on what you're trying to do. I mean, there are lawyers, there are accountants, there are so many different stakeholders in the industry. There are not only the teams and the players, there are potentially unions which might form. There's so many stuff. So I would just focus on what I'm good at regarding law. And I really like to research. I really like writing publications and getting to the bottom of it and that stuff. So it was natural for me, if I wanted to combine esports and law, I should stick to the stuff I know. So the first move should be, what is my daily business? Where do I excel? Where I'm good at? And then let's think about, do they need someone with that skill set in esports or gaming? And where do they need it? Might they need me? And of course, there are a lot of ways. You could join a big law firm. There are law firms who are really getting into esports right now, building up some expertise. Some are doing that pretty good, some not. So you should really take a look at what they're doing in esports. Who do they know in the industry? Or just hit up a team. A lot of people trying to be big too fast. This is why I'm 100% not the number one guy in esports and law, because this is too fast. I'm young, I have time to grow. There's so much to learn from me. Why do you have to start with Fnatic? Why does it have to be Fnatic at first? There are so many teams on the verge of being amateur, on the way to being pro. Support them. And one thing is pretty important. You will probably have to deal with some pay cuts, because the industry, especially in the amateur scene, they do not swim in money. So these are the things you should look out for. What I'm good at right now, how could that be useful to whomever in the space? There are so many different partners, organizations, teams, organizers, all of this stuff, associations, and then try to be humble and where to start. Don't start at the top. Don't start at the top.
Fantastic. Nepo, thank you so much. How do people find you? How do they get in touch with you? Where are you at online?
That's pretty easy. LinkedIn. I follow Twitter and stuff like that, but I'm not really active. So Nepomuk Nothelfer on LinkedIn. And I love, please get in contact with me. I'm not that big of a fan of these ninja invites, you might call them, if you have never talked to a person. So my thing is, I follow them first. If I like their content, what they're doing, if I'm interested in what they're doing, I read their posts, and then I just write them before I connect with them. Write them, hey, great, what you're doing is so interesting. Maybe do you want to have a call? Sometimes let's hit on Discord and talk about what you're doing. Maybe we could do something together. And then, so this is the thing I prefer. So feel free to follow and message me on LinkedIn.
Wonderful. Okay, now, is there anything else you want to talk about, or anything I didn't ask you think we need to cover before we wrap it up?
Well, I mean, there's so much stuff going on. I mean, there's so many great projects I'm involved. I'm lucky that I can call myself a mentor in Law Without Walls, a pretty great organization led by Professor Michel De Stefano, University of Miami. And we had one project regarding diversity and esports. And they had their presentation 1 or 2 days ago. And it was so great with this young, bright minds trying to understand the industry. How can you tackle the big issues regarding discrimination, stuff like that? So I could talk about that for forever. Or our great, we've had the first real law course on a university with G2 Esports last summer in Berlin, which was amazing. We had the best weekend of our lives, 3 days straight. So there are a lot of things. I'm not sure to choose which to choose.
I think what you're really saying is, if anybody else has any other questions, they need to come to you, because you're just a font of knowledge.
I love talking to people, and I think you can learn from each and everyone. And I think, yes, over the last 2 years, there's some knowledge I've accumulated, but I'm surely not the number one guy. But I talk to the number one guys, the best guys, and this is pretty great. So if anyone wants to know something about what we're doing, support us, be part of us, trying to have a cooperation. For example, we're trying to get international corporations going. Hit me up.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I'm going to try this again. Nepomuk Nothelfer, thank you so much for coming on today.
No, thank you so much for having me.
Okay. We really do appreciate it. You really have given us some fantastic advice today. And please, Gamerpreneurs, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to him. We just this morning first time we got to really chat, and he's just so open. It's incredible.
Oh God, thanks so much. I'm blushing. It's a light. It's a light. It's actually the light, of course.
It's the warm light. You got to turn that more white.
yeah, true. But thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast. It's been an honor.
All right. Well, thank you.
Love to do it again.
And Gamerpreneurs, I'm going to remind you all, don't be just a gamer, be a gamerpreneur. Hey, if you like this podcast, I'd love to invite you to check out a little bit more about me, Dr. Bradford Carlton, Gamerpreneur. If you go to my website, www.thegamerpreneur.com/bonus, I'm going to give you a free copy of my book, The Warcraft of Business, where I explain my history in both gaming and business and how I brought the two together in order to create some very successful companies and help a lot of people. And all you got to do is pay for shipping and processing, and I'll send you this book. I absolutely know you're going to love it. All right, you all take it easy.